Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Junia Doan, and this is Uncommon Sense. Thank you for joining us again today. I have a marvelous guest. I can't wait for you to hear what she has to say. Her name is Barbara Tober. She is chairman of the Global Leadership Council and chairman emerita on the board of directors of the Museum of Arts and Design on Columbus Circle right here in New York City. Now, Barbara, you got involved with the museum very early on when it was the American Crafts Museum or some early stage. How did you get involved?
I got involved, but I was at that time editor-in-chief of Brides Magazine at Condé Nast, and I didn't have an awful lot of time to spend with this marvelous museum, which was the American Craft Museum in those days. Started in 1956 by a fabulous, fabulous woman, Eileen Osborne Webb, who gave her heart and soul and money to starting this organization back then. Yeah. We were on 53rd Street. We were very small. We were all sorts of things that nobody ever knew about. Right. And slowly but surely, I finally left Brides in 1994 and was elected chairman of the museum at that time. It's a very great honor, in a way, to be involved in philanthropy because you are helping something build and you're helping to accomplish something, which I think is terribly important. Slowly but surely, I got more involved. My husband and I were honored by the museum in 1993, so that kind of was a push in the right direction. And I became chairman. We fought through two things, two very, very important things. One was to rebrand ourselves and rename ourselves, which we did very slowly. It took 5 years, and people had bets on the fact that we would never change the name of this place. But we thought the Museum of Arts and Design much better described the field that we were in, because it's all about people who make things. And the people, they could be making the sets at the Metropolitan Museum. They could be making diamonds out of carbon. They could be making a little vase out of ceramics, but it doesn't matter. And today, people are making things with 3D printing, and they're making things on the computer, and that is the show we have right now. It is so exciting. We had so many write-ups on this show. It's a big, big success for us. So, over the years, people say to me, oh, well, are you still with the Museum of Arts and Design? It has nothing to do with that. It is, do you love the field that you're in? I mean, you could be raising money for a cancer hospital. There are people here in New York, and I understand what they're about, but one week it's palsy, and the next week it's cancer, and the next week it's something else. I love this field. From around the world, there are people who are in Africa, for example, women who are raising themselves up out of their villages because they have cell phones now, and they have beads, and they have things that they're making to sell at Pier 1 or someplace like that, ABC Carpets. There are so many people importing things from those countries now. That is not necessarily where we are. We're in the museum area, so we're at the height of all of this expertise. But it is a field that helps people make money even in their own home. It's wonderful. They can just put together freedom. Yes, they have freedom. They can put together their workroom, or they can start in their garage, whatever it is. And we're about to honor Wendell Castle, who is a great, great master. And it's a show that we're going to be doing in the future. He started off so small, just making small pieces of furniture. Slowly but surely, he began to not only do pieces of furniture that he liked, he began to do commissions.
Right.
He began to sell at galleries, and then he began to do prototypes for production. And he does all three of those areas, which is very, very exciting for artists today. They can actually make a good living in this field. And that is something that we really love to promote.
You mentioned it took 5 years to change the name or to agree on a new name. What did you learn, or what part of you was best suited to staying with and persuading these people to see through to the goal of the change of name and ultimately the building?
Well, we had two very, very exciting events or passages. One was we had two brand managers. One for a year, and then we gave up on that, and then we got another one who actually joined our board, so we didn't have to pay him. And he is a really famous man, so that he was able to slowly convince. As a matter of fact, in one of the board meetings, he said, "You've got to have the guts to go ahead and do this." And then several of the people in our board said, "Well, do we have to do it now?" Because at that time, we were thinking of moving to a new venue because
Yes.
we didn't want to be in a
it was
basement in
small.
53rd Street anymore. And so I just got up and I said, "If you don't do it now and put the new name on this little building, when we move to another quarters, people will think we went out of business and that's a new museum."
Wise.
Well, we won. And then we were given the rights to, we were looking at all kinds of buildings all over New York City, and we were given the right to propose to the city of New York to buy the building at 2 Columbus Circle. Everybody wanted it. Several museums wanted it. Trump wanted it. And it's a small building, and it
Yes.
sits on top of the subway.
Yes, difficult.
It's very, very difficult because you can't add the air rights. We have air rights, but you can't really add stories on top of this building. It would plummet down into the subway. I don't think they would like that. So we were satisfied with the space that we had, only we had to fight some uptown west side people who were trying to keep us from buying that building and changing it, which the city wanted desperately, because it had never worked for anyone. It was started in 1964 as a museum.
Huntington Hartford.
And Huntington Hartford Museum. He gave up in 1968, then he sold it to Gulf and Western, and Gulf and Western tried to keep it going. And then they finally, it went to a college, and that they sold it to Gulf and Western. And it just went through all these iterations, and no one could really, quote, live there. They couldn't work there. They couldn't be there. And so we knew we could be there if we just took out the whole inside of the thing and took off the outside of it and made it over. And we got a renovation specialist from Portland, Oregon, who was unknown in New York. We had an architectural team of a jury and 11 people who all wanted, I don't know, some of the big famous architects and everything. We knew on our budget that that was not going to work. And so we chose this absolutely fabulous, talented fellow, and he did a great, great job. Brad Klopfil.
How did you, you have a wonderful personality. I've always been a big fan because you're enthusiastic and you see the best in people. When you were confronted by blocking or other people with other ideas, how did you best handle that to see it through successfully?
Time, smile, convince, persuade, and don't get angry. Ever. And if you want to get angry, you have to get angry in front of the mirror at home. Because women today, not all, and I know a lot of young women who are very, very successful, and they understand how to maneuver themselves through business and get what they want to achieve. You do not have to be angry. You do not have to be powerful. You do not, women have all the power they ever want if they just know how to talk to other people, convince, persuade, show, write letters, maybe prepare some sort of proposal on paper that all of a sudden somebody reads it and they say, oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. You have to work from behind. You have to work from underneath. You have to work slowly but surely towards your goal. And I really, there's some, I'm sure I'll get a lot of people angry by saying this, but some women use power very badly. And it's a shame, because we have everything we could possibly want if we just handle it correctly. So it's like being with a great driver going through traffic. There's a way to get things done. It just takes time sometimes. And I was committed forever. So that's why I'm there, and I will be there. We have a new director. He's been there for over 6 months. He has all the wonderful, wonderful qualifications and a PhD, and he's well known in the field, and he has done books and speeches, and he's really, really a very perfect person to head up being a director at the museum. And we are moving now in the direction that he wants, which is, as I said, the makers thing. But of course, we've always been there. He uses the word a lot, but he has a lot of fresh new ideas. And this is going to redound to our favor in the future. So we're working together very closely. As a matter of fact, I'm picking him up tomorrow and taking him to a celebration of Lord Wedgwood, which is, he died, and we're talking to the Wedgwood people about how they make things. And so Glenn will be meeting him, and I think that's exciting.
You were at Brides Magazine a long time, and you were in Chief a long time, and you talk about the new director and new, fresh ideas.
Right.
How did you keep yourself fresh during your Brides Magazine days?
Well, there was so much to do. There were 60 markets to consider in the world of bridal. We did everything to do with the home. We did everything to do with travel. We did, of course, the wedding. We did everything to do with the clothing that the bride wore, but also the flower girls and the bridesmaids and the people who came. This what's called special occasion clothes. So as far as fashion was concerned, it was all very, very beautiful stuff. Some of it was not that beautiful, but you do their best. And we had photography people, and we had an editor who just was, she made every page a poem in her own way. There were people that we discussed everything that we were going to do, and I did a lot of the television and radio promotions and newspaper interviews. And we sent out press releases all the time about what people were doing and how they were performing and how young people were living. And we just expanded upon the subject to the point where it was absolutely fascinating. And I have to say, I was there 30 years as editor-in-chief, and after 20 years, I looked at myself. I'd gotten to have a particular birthday when everybody always questions who they are and where I'm going and why I'm going there. And I went to the Johnson O'Connor aptitude testing.
Good idea.
Aptitude testing center. And I took all these courses, about 3 mornings in a row for a couple of hours. And I saw all these things that, do you want to be a forest ranger? I could tell what the questions were and so on. So anyway, when it was all over, I went into my consultant and he said, you should be in management and you should be in journalism. I thought, okay, I'm here. I'll just make it bigger. So then we started a real blitz around the country. We had lots of books we were doing,
Yes.
and records, and music for weddings, and all sorts of things we could promote. So I was traveling a lot and doing that, and then doing it every day. I did an interview a day that last 10 years.
That's a lot.
I know.
For anybody.
I know. It was
at any time.
I mean, one day would be 4, and the other day nothing.
Yeah.
But it was basically an interview a day.
Now, you had a vision for the museum along with others, right, when you joined it. Did you have a vision when you started your career at Condé Nast at Brides Magazine of where you might want to be, such as editor-in-chief or maybe some other thing that appealed to you early on?
Well, I had 8 jobs before I became editor-in-chief. And I did not go to college. And for all kinds of reasons having to do with some problems in my family, I was accepted, but I could not afford to go. And in those days, I'm not sure that...
Didn't make a difference, do you think?
No, well, maybe it didn't make a difference, but also there weren't the kind of arrangements that there are for students who can't afford to go to college.
Yeah.
So
More scholarships now.
I went to work. I got working papers at 16, and I just went to work. And I was alone because I had left my family. I married early, I think for safe haven, somebody who was very, very supportive and wonderful. You pick up your socks, blow your nose, and move on, and just do your job. And so I was in advertising agencies. I was at Look Magazine. I was Geyer, Newell and Ganger, it was called in those days, Hilton and Riggio. I worked at McFadden Bartell Corporation, and when I went there, I was hired as a beauty editor for one magazine, and they had lots of magazines. So I noticed that the beauty advertisement was in all the magazines. So I went to every editor and I said, you need to have editorial to back up your ads.
Good idea.
So I ended up with 15 different editorials that I was doing for all the different magazines. And in some way I made myself not irresistible, whatever that word is.
Irreplaceable.
But yeah, I got raises for that reason. And I wrote a beauty book in those days. Oh my God, that was so amazing. I was not married at that time, and I came home every night, got a chicken and a bowl and a jar of, they used to sell grapefruit and orange slices in jars, and I got that, and I would sit down at my desk and write at night. And it just have to work very hard. So,
did it take guts to leave your family?
No, my family was so dysfunctional. My father died when I was 15. My mother was completely unable to exist, and they got a divorce, then he came back to her to die, and she was not able to handle life very well. So I just went out on my own. I mean, I left. I just was a boat unto myself. I'm negotiating the waters.
You taught yourself what you needed to know, too.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
really.
I did. And I worked very hard, and I went to school at night with my first husband. I went to school at night. I was thinking of becoming a designer, so I learned how to do pattern making and draping and all that. And I love fashion. I really do. I mean, that's
you're a work of art in what
well,
you wear.
thank you. But I mean, I really, yesterday I got a chance to go to Ralph Rucci's studio.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, what fabulous things he does.
He is an artist.
I belong to the Fashion Institute, it's just, but also that's skill and craftsmanship, same thing. So it's not really a deviation from what I do every day. It's just that we don't show a lot of clothes at the Museum of Arts and Design. But we do show a lot of furniture and all kinds of other things. And we will be talking to people about clothes in the future.
Yes, when you were leading, whether it was as brides or the museum, did you have to I don't want to say have to accommodate. Different people have different personalities, different ways of doing things. Did you sort of respect that and mold to that a little bit?
Absolutely.
And could you tell early on when you first met the person what what they would receive best, not necessarily in content, but in approach or how you need to talk with them?
Well, yes, you have to adjust your behavior to achieve understanding in the other person. It's very, very necessary. I had a woman, I love her to this day. She's living in San Miguel de Allende now. She came from the UK, and they hired her at Condé Nast to be my copy editor. Well, she wrote in UK copy. I mean, she wrote
Yes.
English.
Yeah.
So what we did, at least 3 times a week, we sat in my office for an hour after work, and we talked American English. And I would explain to her what the colloquialisms were, how this worked, how that worked. She got it, and she ended up being a writer. I mean, she ended up having a very successful career as a writer. But I remember that whole thing. I walked into Brides, and there was an editor who had written a piece, for a feature piece for the magazine, and I did not find it fluid enough. So I thought, how do I handle this? And I took it home and I rewrote it over the weekend. And I handed it to her on Monday, and I said, I'm sorry that I haven't taken every word that you put down as you did it, but now that I'm here, I would like it to be this kind of structure. And she said to me, because I was 31 at the time, and she said, I'm 30 and I wanted this job. And she said, I didn't think I was old enough to have it. And I said, well, I'm really sorry, but here I am. There's nothing we could do about it. And so I'm happy to work with you, and we can see how we can work together. Well, she stayed for a while, not forever, but she stayed for a while.
Where did you learn to write so well and fluidly?
I don't know. I remember we used to have Scholastic magazines when I was a kid in grammar school, and I always got things published in Scholastic magazines. And I got always an A in English and all that, and I had really good instructors, not in New York City. I was born in New Jersey, and we had to move. When my father and mother got a divorce, we had to move up to our farm near the Delaware Water Gap. So there were great teachers up there. World history and Latin and all those things. Right up there in way outside of New York, about 60 miles from New York City. It was great. So they say that it's the teachers that make all the difference. You can talk about schools and principals all you want, but if you have really exciting teachers, there were several. There was a home furnishings editor that drove me crazy, and I finally got to be able to replace her. But I had a lot of problems there, and. But you can't live without problems. That's what they are. They confront you every single day. So you just figure out, you have to strategize, you have to think it through, and see if you can find some allies to help you get whatever you want done.
Thank you, Barbara. Barbara has told us so much that it's important to comment on and perhaps review. Firstly, you need to be an entrepreneur in your own life. It doesn't matter where you start. You are the designer of your life. You have to work hard. You have to find the teachers that can help you. And you have to do everything just better. Wherever you are, make it better. Also, the idea that there's no point in really fighting with people. If you really want them to come with you, you can either, as she said about the museum, talk to them endlessly in different kinds of ways and keep your frustration away from them. Also, when as an employer or a director, when you have to work with someone who who needs some kind of, or you think needs some kind of a correction, there's a way to do it, even though that there's kickback sometimes, to keep the relationship or keep the dialogue going, knowing that at some point that won't work. But as she says, there were problems, and there's problems for everybody in life. And actually, that's what makes life interesting in some way. We are problem-solving species. So good luck in your life. And Barbara, I'm so glad you had some time to share with us. This has been very informative and inspiring.
I enjoyed it immensely.
Immensely is a good way to live. Always, always, always. One should always have joy. At least that's what I think. Every day.
Yes.
In what you're doing. And it's amazing to me how we are the determinants of joy.
I love what you said about we're problem-solving species. That's, I think, the thing I'm most proud of is being able to solve a problem.
That's worth being proud of, because it means that you not only can have the dream, the goal, but you can visualize, perhaps you're pattern making, of different ways to do a skirt or solve the problem, and therefore leave you with the habit of making the plan along path A, path B, path C.
Yeah. Well, if you don't manage to make plan A work, there's always plan B.
Yes.
And you make the most of it.
To contact Junia, send her an email at info@juniadoan.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadoan.com. Thanks for joining us. See you next time for Uncommon Sense with Junia Doan.
Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
From walking down the aisle to strolling through museums, my next guest has done it all behind the scenes. I'm Junia Doan. Join us on Uncommon Sense.